What if the mark on your skin was not just a mark, but a warning, a blessing, or a secret message from heaven in the Middle Ages? Birthmarks could be blamed on a mother's cravings, the phases of the moon, a saint's touch, or even a frightening animal seen before birth. Tonight, we step into a world of candlelit rooms, whispered superstition, and strange medieval beliefs about the human body. If you enjoy relaxing history stories like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves mysterious history. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing ankle-deep in brown evening mud outside a walled town, while river mist crawls low over the road and tired horses breathe white into the winter air. Cold stone rises before you, damp straw clings to your boots, smoke gathers under the gatehouse rafters, and somewhere beyond the walls a bell sounds once, slow and hollow, as if the town itself has been reminded to shiver. Torchlight trembles on iron hinges. A cartwheel complains in the ruts. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. They praised the charming walls, but forgot the smell of wet wool, old onions, and anxious oxen. And, gently, you probably would not last a week out here, not without better shoes, a thicker cloak, and a deep personal friendship with lice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from, and what the local time is where the night has found you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You draw your fur-lined cloak closer and shuffle forward with travellers waiting for the gateward to decide whether they are honest, sick, taxable, or merely damp. The walls are squat, patched, and blackened near the torches, with old lime wash clinging like tired flour. The queue moves slowly. A fishwife with red hands balances a wicker basket under sacking. A peddler carries bone combs and cheap pins wrapped in cloth. Beside the gate, rushes have been thrown over the worst of the mud, though they have become a dark mat of straw, hoof prints, and whatever the geese have contributed, the smell arrives first and apologizes never. Then you notice the child. She stands just ahead of you, half hidden behind her mother's skirt, clutching a crust of coarse bread as if it is treasure from a dragon's hoard. She cannot be more than 6. Her wool hood has slipped back, and on the left side of her neck, below the ear, there lies a mark dark as watered wine, a soft irregular patch warmed by torchlight. Not a wound, not dirt, a birthmark, broad and unmistakable, the colour of a plum left too long in the cold. The mother sees you notice, and her hand rises at once, not angrily, but with the tired speed of long habit. She tucks the hood forward. Around them, other eyes have already done their small, silent work. A carter glances away. The peddler's wife makes the sign of the cross with her thumb against her chest. The gateward, who has seen thieves, fevers, bribes, and perhaps 3 suspiciously miraculous cheeses, looks at the child's neck longer than he needs to. No one says anything. That is how many judgments begin here, not with shouting, but with a pause. You feel that pause settle like another layer of mist. In this town, as in many towns along muddy roads and river bends, a mark upon the skin is rarely allowed to be only a mark. A mole, a stain, a red patch, a dark crescent, each can become a doorway through which fear, curiosity, pity, gossip, and faith all try to enter. Some swear that such marks are printed upon a child before birth by the mother's longing, fright, or secret sorrow, though no one can quite agree whether longing has a steadier hand for drawing than fright. Others mutter that a hidden mark may be lucky, especially if round, especially if someone's grandmother once said so. The gateward calls the mother forward. His lantern is made of horn, yellow and smoky. He asks where she comes from. She says from the mill hamlet beyond St. Bridget's Ford. He asks what she carries. She says 2 loaves, some thread, and a penny for market toll. The girl stares at the iron key hanging from his belt. Child had it from birth, he asks. Aye, the mother says. Not fever. No fever. Not God's warning. Here the mother's chin lifts only a little. God warns as he pleases, Master Gateward. But he also makes children. It is a brave answer, quiet enough not to be called rude, firm enough not to be mistaken for surrender. A monk on a mule looks down at his reins. You wise traveller that you are, discover sudden interest in a puddle. Medieval manners often consist of knowing when a puddle deserves your full attention. The gateward grunts. Perhaps he's satisfied. Perhaps he's bored. He takes the toll penny, bites it, then waves her through. The child passes under the arch, and for one brief moment the torchlight catches the hidden mark again, wine dark beneath the wool, like a small secret carried into the town with the bread, the thread, and the evening cold. You follow beneath the gate's oak beams. The stones overhead are black with old smoke, and the portcullis teeth hang above like an ancient jaw, not yet ready to close. Inside, the town opens in narrow lanes paved badly and drained worse. Water runs along the centre channel. Chickens hop aside with offended dignity. A dog with one torn ear lifts its head from a doorway and decides that you might eventually drop food. It begins to follow. The mother and child turn toward a lane where shuttered houses lean together, their upper stories nearly touching like neighbours whispering across the air. Beeswax candles gleam behind oiled cloth windows. Smoke thickens into the dusk, carrying smells of pottage, damp firewood, smoked fish, and the sour sweet warmth of ale. You do not follow too closely. Instead you drift toward the square, where the last traders pack away goods beneath rain-dark awnings. Yet the child's birthmark lingers in your mind, not because it is frightening. It is not. It is simply human, as ordinary as a bent finger, a kitchen scar, or rough red hands counting coins. But here, under watchfires and bells, ordinary things gather meanings the way cloaks gather burrs. You pass a roadside niche set into the wall, where a little painted saint stands behind candle soot. Someone has left a bent pin, a heel of bread, and a sprig of dried rosemary before it. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such offerings are prayers, bargains, habits, or all three braided together by cold fingers. The dog follows you to the alehouse overhang as the gate doors groan shut behind you. Warm light leaks through the cracks. Voices murmur within, low and thick. The child and her mother are gone now into the town's inner lanes, carrying their small life beyond your sight. Yet the hush at the gate remains with you. By the time you duck under the alehouse lintel, you understand one thing clearly in this world. A birthmark is not merely seen. It is read, weighed, and folded into stories by people who need the world to speak back, even when the world offers only skin, shadow, and a mark the colour of winter wine. The alehouse gives you warmth first and welcome second, which is the honest order of things in a town like this. You duck beneath the low beam, feel smoke press gently against your face, and stand a moment while your eyes learn the room. Rushes lie over the beaten floor, sweetened with lavender long ago and now mostly educated in boots. A fire mutters in a clay-lined hearth. Above it hang blackened hooks, a small iron pot, and strips of fish smoking so slowly they seem to be thinking about it. The dog with the torn ear slips in behind you as if invited by ancient law. No one throws him out, which suggests the landlord has already lost this argument. You find a place near the wall. Men bend over trenchers of coarse bread. A tinker warms his hands. 2 carters discuss a broken wheel with the sorrow usually reserved for dying kings. From somewhere above, a baby cries, then quiets when a woman begins to hum. The mother from the gate is not here. The little girl with a wine-dark mark is not here. Yet their absence seems to sit beside you, close as steam from the bowl set before you. You eat slowly. It fills the body without troubling the imagination. When the alewife sees you glance toward the door, she leans near and says, "You saw the mill, child. Then—" You say nothing, because in medieval towns silence can be a safer purse than honesty. She was born with it. The alewife continues. Old Marjorie caught her. If you want tales of marks, go to the back room. Marjorie knows every child born between here and the ford, whether the child thanks her for it or not. You carry your cup through a hanging wool curtain into a narrower room where herbs dry from rafters in dark little bundles. Their shadows sway over the wall sage, rue, fennel, betony, and rosemary, tied with faded thread. There is a cradle near the hearth, empty except for folded linen, and a stool polished by years of anxious fathers sitting poorly. An old woman sits with her feet on a brick, her hands folded under a patched shawl. This is Marjorie. She looks you over once and decides you're either harmless or too tired to be interesting. Sit, traveller, she says. You have the look of one who has questions stuck in the teeth. You sit. The dog chooses the warmest place and sighs as though he has carried the whole town on his back. Marjorie's fire burns lower than the alehouse blaze, but it is kinder. Beeswax candles stand in a lump of clay on the table, giving off a faint honeyed scent. Beside them lie a spindle, linen strips, a dark wooden spoon, and a little pouch sewn with red thread. You do not ask what is inside. In a midwife's room, some questions are doors, and not every door needs opening at night. The child at the gate, Marjorie says at last. Her mother took fright before quickening, or so her aunt says, saw a butcher slap a calf skin on a board, dark red, wet like. After that, they said the mark came. No one can quite agree whether a mother's fright truly travels into the hidden child, but many here speak as if the womb is a warm wax tablet, soft enough for terror, hunger, prayer, and moonlight to press their shapes upon it. Marjorie does not say this with cruelty. She says it the way one speaks of rain coming from the west, not because she can command it, but because she has watched people believe it for longer than you have owned your boots. Another woman, she says, long before you came mudding through our gate, craved cherries in Lent. Cherries, mind you, when there were none but dried stones in jars. Her boy was born with a red speck under his chin, round as a berry. All the aunts nodded themselves nearly bald from wisdom. She pauses to sip from a small cup. Could have been nothing. Could have been God. Could have been the child himself deciding to wear a cherry for reasons known only to infants, who are a secretive people. You smile despite the sleepiness pressing behind your eyes. Marjorie's beliefs do not march in a straight road. They wander like hens. She tells you that a mark near the mouth may mean a mother longed for food she never tasted. A mark on the hand may hint that she reached for something forbidden, or merely that the child arrived with skin doing what skin sometimes does. Some swear that a pale patch near the shoulder is a touch from an unseen guardian. Others say dark marks come from shadows crossed at the wrong hour. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but they all tell it with confidence, which in village life is often mistaken for proof. She lifts the red sewn pouch and lets it hang from one finger. For women near their time, some carry this thread, a pinch of salt, a little crumb from St. Agnes's loaf, if such a loaf can be found. Mostly it steadies the hand. A steady hand is no small charm. Outside, the town bell sounds again, muffled by wall and mist. The half-burned candle on the table gutters, then steadies. Time here is measured by bells, by hearths, by dough rising, by cows needing milk, by babies who refuse to arrive until everyone has become thoroughly inconvenienced. "And what do you believe?" you ask her softly. She studies the fire. "I believe," she says, "that folk fear what they cannot mend. So they make a tale to hold it. A mark on a babe's skin is small, but worry is large. Give worry a story, and it sits quieter." The words settle over you more gently than the wool curtain. You think again of the mother at the gate, her hand pulling the hood forward, her voice steady beneath the gateward's lantern. You think of the child staring at the iron key, unconcerned with the meanings adults hang upon her like damp cloaks. Marjorie reaches for a basket and hands you a folded blanket. Rough but warm. Sleep by the wall if you must. Mind the draught, and if the dog steals your bread, blame yourself. He was born with a mark of thievery somewhere under that fur, I'd wager. The dog opens one eye, accepting the accusation with dignity. You settle near the smaller fire, with wet wool steaming faintly from your cloak and the honey smell of beeswax thinning into smoke. Above you, the herbs stir in the rafters. Somewhere in the town, a child with a hidden mark sleeps under her mother's hand. And as the room darkens, you understand that Marjorie's world is not divided cleanly between truth and superstition. It is stitched together from births, fears, hunger, prayers, jokes, and the old need to explain why one child enters life carrying a sign no one else can read. You wake before the fire has fully surrendered, though it has become more memory than flame. A red eye of coal glows beneath pale ash, and the room holds that deep early chill that seems to have been poured from the stones themselves. Your blanket has twisted around 1 foot. Your cloak smells of wet wool, smoke, and the faint herbal breath of Marjorie's rafters. The dog with the torn ear has somehow taken half your sleeping place, though he contributes nothing toward rent, guard duty, or spiritual comfort. Marjorie is already awake. She moves quietly near the table, tying her shawl under her chin and wrapping something in linen. Her hands know the room without needing much light. She checks the cradle, though it is empty. She pinches the beeswax candle straight in its clay lump. She takes the little red sewn pouch from beside the spindle and tucks it into her belt. "Come," she says, as if you have already agreed. You rise because, in a medieval room before dawn, old women often sound more certain than kings. Outside, the lane lies blue-grey and narrow beneath the first whitening of morning. Shutters remain closed. Frost has silvered the edges of cart ruts. The town smells of banked fires, damp thatch, old straw, and the sharp patience of winter. Somewhere a rooster begins an argument with the sky and loses on dignity immediately. Marjorie leads you past leaning houses and a bakehouse where a boy in a wool cap scrapes ash from the oven mouth. 2 women carry wooden buckets toward the well, their breath showing in little clouds. A man opens his stall by touch, setting out onions and dried peas with the care of a priest arranging relics. Though onions rarely receive enough reverence considering what they do for thin soup. At the town wall, a small postern gate stands open for early workers. The gateward from last night is not there. Another man sits wrapped in a cloak, chewing something mysterious and looking offended by consciousness. You pass him with a nod. The dog follows, naturally, because your journey has apparently acquired a hairy witness. Beyond the wall, the road bends toward a stone cross set where 3 paths meet. Beside it stands a roadside shrine, little more than a roofed niche of weathered timber and lime-washed stone, but someone has hung it with strips of faded cloth, pilgrim badges, rosary beads, and sprigs of box. A painted saint, cracked across the face by age or frost, gazes outward with one hand raised. The saint's eyes are dark dots, unevenly painted, yet in the half-light they seem almost wakeful. Marjorie stops before it. She does not kneel at once. She listens. The road has its own quiet at this hour, frozen mud underfoot. Bare branches clicking, a cart far away, the river moving unseen behind reeds. Then the pilgrims come into view, 3 figures in patched cloaks, their hats pinned with small lead badges. One badge shows a shell, another bears the shape of a hand. The third has been rubbed so smooth it might be any holy thing at all, which is convenient if one wants a flexible miracle. They greet Marjorie by name, everyone does. Midwives, like bells and taxes, belong to the whole parish whether invited or not. One pilgrim is a woman with a bandaged wrist. One is a narrow man carrying a staff darkened by rain. The last is an older fellow whose beard points in several theological directions. They have slept in a barn, they say, and now make toward the abbey 2 miles beyond the fields, where a saint's finger bone is kept in silver, though some swear it is the finger, and others say it is only a toe, and a few impious souls suggest no one should be too bold in identifying old bones by candlelight. Marjorie asks after the marked infant from the mill hamlet. The woman pilgrim nods slowly. Wine patch by the neck. Aye? Could be St. Agatha's mercy, says the narrow man. Could be St. Cuthbert, says the older pilgrim. Could be the child's own skin, Marjorie says. The pilgrims look at her, then at the saint in the niche, as if the painted figure might object. It does not. Paint is patient. Here, in the cold before sunrise, you hear another shape of belief. Not every mark is feared. Some are whispered over as blessings. A reddish patch near the heart may be called a saint's kiss. A pale mark on the brow may be taken for a sign that the child was touched in sleep by a holy hand before birth. Some swear that if a pregnant woman prays long at a shrine, and the child is born with a mark shaped faintly like a cross, a leaf, or a flame, then the saint has left proof of listening. Others warn that one must not boast of such a mark, because blessings, like fresh eggs, travel poorly when shaken by pride. No one can quite agree whether the saints choose marks, or whether frightened families choose saints afterward to make the marks gentler. Yet the difference seems less important here than the comfort. A blessing is easier to carry than a warning. A mother may sleep a little better if a dark patch beneath her child's ear becomes not shame, not omen, but a secret token of heavenly notice. The woman pilgrim unwraps her bandaged wrist. On the skin there lies a small brown mark, oval as a bean. Had this since birth, she says. My mother said St. Edith set it there so I would remember humility. The older pilgrim snorts. Did it work? Not especially. Even Marjorie smiles. The woman touches the shrine rail with 2 fingers, then touches the mark on her wrist. It is not grand. It is barely a ritual, just a tiny habit shaped by years. But you see how such gestures settle into a life. The body becomes a little map of signs, and each sign needs a story. A scar from a cooking pot, a wart blamed on a toad never properly consulted, a birthmark said to belong to a saint. Each one helps a person belong to the world that has marked them. Marjorie unties the linen bundle, Inside is a small loaf, round and dark, baked with a cross pressed into its top. She sets it at the shrine beside a bent pin and yesterday's withered rosemary. For the mill child, she murmurs. The painted saint receives the bread in silence, frost pearls on the roof edge. The first true light spreads over the road, touching the badges on the pilgrims' hats until they glimmer dully like old coins. The dog sniffs the offering, considers becoming a heretic, and wisely retreats when Marjorie glances down. You stand with them a little longer, breathing cold mist and candle smoke from the shrine's tiny flame. You think of the birthmark at the gate, hidden by a mother's hand, and wonder how many meanings might fit upon one patch of skin. Fear at dusk, mercy at dawn, gossip by noon, and tenderness at night. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but every version seems to reveal the teller more clearly than the mark itself. When Marjorie turns back toward the town, the pilgrims continue along the road, their staffs tapping softly. You follow the old midwife beneath a brightening sky, while behind you the little shrine waits at the crossroads, holding bread, pins, rosemary, and the patient possibility that even a mark no one understands may become a blessing if enough weary hearts need it to be so. By the time you return through the postern gate, the town has begun to remember that it is alive. Shutters creak open. Smoke lifts from roof holes in thin grey ribbons. A woman scatters yesterday's rushes from her threshold with a twig broom, chasing straw, soot, and one deeply offended hen into the lane. Somewhere near the bakehouse, bread comes out of the oven with that warm, brown smell that makes even the most devout soul consider small theft. Marjorie leaves you near the square, saying she must visit a woman whose pains have begun too early, or too late, or exactly on time in a manner that still troubles everyone. She gives no farewell beyond a nod, which feels sufficient. The dog remains with you, of course, because he has chosen the easier profession companionship without accountability. You drift back toward the alehouse as morning sharpens into market day. The same low door receives you. Inside, the room is brighter but no less smoky, with pale light leaking through oiled cloth and catching dust above the hearth. A girl lays fresh rushes over the floor, tucking in sprigs of mint and tansy. For one blessed moment the room smells almost clean, though the older smells lurk beneath with the patience of experienced sinners. You take a place near the fire. The alewife sets down a wooden bowl of pottage, thick with peas, barley, leek, and whatever kindness the pot has managed to remember. Beside it lies a trencher of coarse bread, hard at the edges, soft in the middle, ready to be plate, spoon, and meal all in one. Across from you, the peddler from the gate warms his fingers around a cup. Near him sits a young mother with a sleeping infant bundled tight in wool. An older man with a felt cap carves a peg from hazel wood, each shaving curling down to his knee. You have barely lifted your spoon when someone says, "It was cherries." You look up. The alewife, who has the gift of entering every conversation before it has properly begun, nods toward the bundled infant, her sister's boy, red mark under the chin. Everyone knows it came from cherries. The young mother rolls her eyes, but only after checking whether the older women can see. "My sister wanted cherries," she says. She also wanted sleep, quiet, and a husband who did not smell of eel. The child has only the cherry mark, so we may count ourselves spared. The peddler chuckles into his cup. And so the room opens around that old belief that a mother's craving, especially a craving denied, may print itself upon the child she carries. A longing for strawberries might leave red speckles. A hunger for fish might mark the skin with a pale scale-like patch. A desire for wine might darken a place like spilled claret. Some swear that if a pregnant woman touches her own cheek while craving apples, the child may bear a mark upon the cheek if she clutches her belly in fright or hunger. The mark may settle there. No one can quite agree whether the craving must be denied, indulged, witnessed, confessed, or merely dramatic enough to impress the neighbours. The old man with a hazel peg points his knife carefully away from everyone. A rare courtesy. My mother said a woman must not look too long at fire when carrying. My cousin was born with a red flame down his arm. Your cousin fell into the dye vat at 7, the alewife says. After the mark he replies, Convenient order. He shrugs, undisturbed by evidence. Evidence, you are learning, is welcome in town so long as it does not spoil a well-loved story. The young mother adjusts the infant's blanket. Only the child's nose shows, pink and solemn. My aunt says if you crave hare and do not eat it, the child may be marked like a hare, or born quick-footed. Was your aunt quick-footed? Asks the peddler. She married a tax collector and escaped him twice, so perhaps. This draws a low laugh from the room, soft enough not to wake the baby. Outside, market noise gathers cartwheels, hoofbeats, the call of a woman selling onions, the clink of a toll penny dropped into a box. Inside, the fire pops and sends a brief shower of sparks up the soot-black chimney. You eat your pottage slowly, listening as each person adds a thread to the tangle. There is talk of a woman who craved roasted eel and bore a child with a long dark mark curling round one ankle. Talk of another who yearned for mulberries during a hard winter and whose daughter carried a purple patch beneath her shoulder blade. Talk of a blacksmith's wife who feared sparks and birthed a boy with freckles across his hands, as if the forge had kissed him before he ever saw daylight. Even now, it is hard to tell whether these tales are warnings, comforts, or clever ways to blame mothers for mysteries no one can solve. The room does not speak of it so plainly. Here, courses are chosen like herbs from a hanging bundle, one for fear, one for hunger, one for God, one for the moon, one for old women who like their explanations neatly tied. Yet beneath the gossip, you sense something tender. A craving story gives shape to the unknown. It lets a family say, this mark came from cherries, instead of sitting alone with the bewildering fact that a child's skin may bloom with colour for no visible reason. It changes strangeness into memory. The mother wanted fruit. The fruit was absent. The child arrived carrying the fruit's ghost. It is not medicine, perhaps, but it is a kind of cradle song. The alewife leans across to refill your cup. Best cure, she says, is to give a woman what she asks before she begins naming the unborn child after pies. Sound counsel, says the peddler, though costly. Less costly than hearing about it for 20 years. The dog rests his chin on your boot and sighs agreement. He likely believes all human suffering begins with food withheld. The young mother peels back the blanket just enough to look at her infant's face. He has no mark, she says softly, as if deciding whether this is relief or disappointment. Give him time, the old man says. Life marks us later if birth forgets. The room quiets for a breath. It is a simple sentence, but it lands with the weight of something worn smooth by truth. Everyone here bears some sign-scarred knuckles, wind-raw cheeks, bent backs, missing teeth, old burns, a limp disguised as dignity. Perhaps that is why birthmarks trouble people. They arrive too early, before work, before sin, before choice, before story. So the village hurries to provide one. You finish the last of the pottage. The trencher has softened with broth, and you break off a piece, warm and heavy in your hand. Outside, The market bell rings once, calling traders to order. The sound reminds you of the bell before dawn, and of the shrine road, and of the mother at the gate lifting the hood over her child's wine-dark neck. As you rise from the bench, the alehouse keeps talking behind you. Cherries, fire, hare, mulberries, eel, hunger and fear, mothers and marks. Each tale follows you into the square like smoke clinging to wool, not quite seen, not quite gone. You step from the alehouse into the market square just as the morning settles into its full grey brightness. The town has widened around you, though not generously. Stalls press close to one another beneath patched canvas. A man with a blue wool hood argues over saltfish as if he is defending a castle. Two women weigh beans in a wooden balance, their fingers red with cold. Near the well, a boy carries buckets that swing against his knees. Slopping water over his shoes with the patience of someone learning early that dignity and chores rarely travel together. The market bell's sound fades, but another bell answers from beyond the eastern fields. It comes soft and deep, carried over roofs, walls, and winter mist. The Abbey bell. Not the bright town bell that bargains with merchants and tolls, but a slower voice, older in the air. It marks one of the holy hours, though the exact hour is known best by monks, roosters, and people who have not slept comfortably since harvest. A woman beside the onion stall crosses herself when she hears it. Born at that bell, she says to no one in particular. The onion seller, who appears prepared to sell both onions and opinions by weight, glances at her. Who? My niece's girl. Born between the dark bell and the first light, mark shaped like a little crescent on her thigh. A moonchild, says another woman, not quite admiring, not quite afraid. And there it is again, a mark becoming a doorway. You linger by the stall, pretending to study onions of nearly identical sadness. The dog sits beside you and looks hopeful, though onions are a poor ambition. Around you, market voices braid with the distant Abbey bell, and soon the talk turns from cherries and cravings to moonlight, blood, winter weather, and the hour when a child first cries. Some swear that a baby born under a waning moon may carry a fading mark, pale as milk or ash, while a baby born when the moon swells round may bear something redder, darker, fuller. Others insist that the moon has nothing to do with it unless clouds veil it, or unless the mother sees it through glass, or unless a midwife forgets to cover the birthing room window. No one can quite agree whether the moon presses signs into the skin or merely receives blame because it hangs there looking guilty in silver every night. The onion seller leans nearer, lowering her voice as if the moon might be listening from behind a chimney. My grandmother told of a boy born when the moon was red over the marsh, had a mark like spilled wine across his ribs. Did he grow strange? Asks the woman beside her. He grew tall, says the seller. That is not strange. It was in our family. The women accept this as a reasonable clarification. You move with the market's slow current, past smoked fish, cheap wool ribbons, beeswax tapers, wooden bowls, and a cage of drowsy hens blinking with the weary suspicion of philosophers. A butcher sprinkles straw over the frozen ground before his table. A potter unwraps jugs packed in hay. A friar stands near the cross with a begging bowl, his sandals dark from mud, his face red from cold and piety in equal measure. The Abbey bell rings again, farther this time because your thoughts have carried you inward. You remember Marjorie's room, the herbs overhead, the empty cradle, the way she spoke of worry needing a story. Perhaps the bell is another kind of story. It divides the day into pieces people can understand, matins in the deep dark, lords near dawn, prime when work begins, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. Birth does not always respect such divisions. Of course, babies arrive during storms, sermons, baking, milking, arguments, and moments when everyone involved has just sat down. Still, once a child enters the world, people look at the hour and begin reading. A child born at dawn, they say, may be hopeful, mild, blessed with light. A child born at midnight may be watchful, secretive, perhaps too close to the border between seen and unseen things. A child born during the tolling for the dead may carry a solemn mark, or a serious nature, or simply the misfortune of having relatives who cannot leave a coincidence alone. Some swear that if a child's first cry comes before the bell finishes ringing, the mark will fade. If the cry comes after, the mark will remain. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on which bell matters, which is inconvenient in a land full of bells. Near the well you find Marjorie again. She has one hand tucked under her shawl and the other wrapped around a clay cup of hot ale. Steam rises against her chin. She watches two boys chase each other around the well with sticks until a washerwoman threatens them with a wet sheet, a weapon whose power is deeply underestimated by military men. "You hear them?" Marjorie asks. "The bells? The beliefs." She nods toward the women by the onions. Moon did this, Moon did that. Storm marked him. Snow softened her. Wind turned the child. Folk give the sky a busy trade. You stand beside her while a thin snow begins to fall. Not enough to whiten the square, only enough to make the air seem filled with pale, drifting ash. Marjorie tells you of children born in hard weather, a boy delivered during thunder, later said to carry a jagged red mark down his back where lightning had glanced at him in the womb. A girl born in a frost so bitter the ale froze in the pitcher, who bore a pale patch on one hand and was said to have been touched by winter before she touched the world. Another child, born during a river flood, had a dark mark shaped like a little pool near the ankle, and all the aunts agreed water had claimed him first, though he grew into a miller and spent his life perfectly dry except on working days. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such beliefs begin with fear of childbirth, awe of weather, or the simple human habit of placing one event beside another and tying them with thread. Birth is dangerous here. Women know it. Men know it but speak more clumsily. Midwives know it most of all. When a child arrives safely, marked but breathing, the room needs a reason for everything: the mother's pain, the blood on linen, the prayers whispered too quickly, the candle guttering, the bell sounding beyond the wall. A birthmark gives the room something visible to hold. Marjorie sips her hot ale. If a babe cries under bells, she says, some say the mark has been named by heaven. If under wind, by the air. If under snow, by silence. And what do you say? I say wrap the child warm before everyone starts preaching at its knees. This too feels like wisdom. The snow thickens for a few breaths, then thins again. Market people pull hoods forward. Someone drops a basket of turnips, and they roll across the square with more freedom than most peasants will ever know. The dog chases one, proudly captures it, and then looks disappointed by victory. You look past the roofs toward where the abbey bell has fallen quiet. The sky is low, the kind of winter sky that seems to rest directly upon chimneys and church towers. Somewhere beyond those fields, monks chant by candlelight, measuring the hours with psalms, while in town women measure them with labour pains, kettles, milk pails, and children's cries. A birthmark beneath such a sky becomes more than colour. It becomes moon memory, storm touch, bell sign, frost kiss. It becomes the weather of the hour made visible. Or perhaps it remains only skin, and all these meanings gather around it because people standing in cold rooms beside newborns need comfort, blame, blessing, and a way to say that the universe noticed. You draw your cloak tighter as Marjorie turns toward the Abbey Road. The half-burned candle smell still clings to your sleeve. The dog trots after you with the stolen turnip, unwilling to release the one miracle he understands. Behind you, the market resumes its bargaining, and above it all, though the bell is silent now, you can almost feel its last deep note lingering over the town, as if every Mark child has once been held beneath that sound. The Abbey Road receives you with frost at its edges and mud in its middle, as if winter and autumn have agreed to share the misery fairly. Marjorie walks with the steady patience of someone who has crossed this road in childbirth weather, harvest heat, and Lent hunger. The dog trots behind her, carrying the turnip sideways in his mouth, proud as a knight bearing a captured banner. The abbey rises beyond bare orchards and low fields, first as a smudge of stone, then as walls, then as a tower with narrow windows black against the pale day. Smoke lifts from a bakehouse near the outer yard. A lay brother leads 2 donkeys past split logs, while hens peck at scattered grain with the solemn industry of scholars. At the guest-house door, warmth smells of damp cloaks, bean broth, rushes, and ink. You step inside and feel the day soften around you. The room is long, low, and dim, with a hearth at one end and trestle tables set along the wall. Travellers sit near the fire, 2 pilgrims from the Shrine Road, a wool merchant with tired eyelids, and a young cleric whose nose drips whenever he tries to look dignified. A row of pegs holds cloaks steaming faintly, including yours once you surrender it. Marjorie is greeted, naturally, by name. She leaves her bundle near the fire and speaks quietly with a guestmaster monk, a round man with flour-dusted sleeves. You're given broth in a wooden bowl and a place near a table where 3 scribes work beneath winter light. Their fingers are stained black and brown, the nails rimmed with ink. One has a knife for scraping errors from parchment. Another warms his hands around a cup and then returns them to the page as if expecting the letters to behave better after a rest. The youngest bends over a manuscript with such seriousness that you suspect he's either copying holy wisdom or drawing a pig in the margin. In truth, he's doing both, because medieval learning often leaves room for livestock. You sit quietly, spooning broth thickened with peas, and watch them write. Their quills move with tiny dry whispers. One parchment bears a neat list of births recorded in nearby villages' names, feast days, fathers, godparents, payments, and occasionally a note added in a smaller hand. Beside one entry, the scribe has written that a boy was born with a red mark under his left eye, like a drop of sealing wax. Beside another, a girl is said to have a pale patch upon her shoulder. Not unlike a leaf, these details sit beside rents, baptisms, and measures of barley made official by ink. No one can quite agree whether ink makes a thing truer, but it certainly makes it harder to deny. The oldest scribe sees you reading and tilts the parchment away, though not before enjoying the fact that you saw enough to be curious. His name, you learn, is Brother Anselm. He has a narrow face, a careful mouth, and the expression of a man who has spent years correcting other people's spelling in silence. Marks should be written, he says. A child's body may witness what a family forgets. The young cleric sniffs, or what a family invents. Brother Anselm does not look up. Invention is also worth recording. It travels farther than truth and often arrives earlier. Here the beliefs change their clothes. In the alehouse, they smelled of pottage, cherries, and hearth smoke. At the shrine, They wore pilgrim badges and prayer. In the guest house, they put on Latin words, clean columns, and the confidence of men who own ink. Brother Anselm speaks of humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. He says that skin may reveal heat, cold, wetness, or dryness within the body, and that a reddish mark might be linked, perhaps, to excess heat or blood. He says perhaps very gravely, which makes it sound more expensive. Another scribe, Brother Odo, disagrees without lifting his eyes, or the mother beheld a red thing, or the midwife said she did, says the young cleric, or the grandmother improved the tale, says the wool merchant. Grandmothers are dangerous editors, Marjorie says from the hearth. This quiet line pleases the room. You learn that scribes sometimes record marks for reasons less mystical than practical. A birthmark may help identify a child in a parish where 3 Johns, 2 Williams, and a surprising number of Agneses are born within one winter. A mark near the ear, a brown patch on the wrist, a red crescent under the ribs. Such things can become proof in disputes over inheritance, apprenticeship, fosterage, or baptism. A body, in a world without painted portraits for common folk, becomes its own document. Yet the record does not stay clean. Margins attract wonder, the way rushes attract mud. Beside a note about a child marked like a berry, some earlier hand has drawn a tiny vine curling around the words. Beside a mention of a mark shaped like a fish, a bored scribe has added a fish with a monk's face. Brother Anselm pretends not to see it, which means he has seen it for years and lost the will to suffer. Some swear that certain shapes should be watched: crosses for blessing, claws for warning, circles for luck, dark patches on the back for a burden carried from before birth. Others say marks near the heart show strong feeling, marks on the hand show skill, and marks on the foot show wandering. Even now, it's hard to tell whether these notions come from books, bedside talk, old charms, or scribes adding dignity to gossip by writing it very small. Brother Anselm opens another book and shows you an old medical passage copied in tight lines. He explains that learned men have long wondered how impressions form in unborn children, whether through the mother's imagination, the stirring of blood, the influence of stars, or God's hidden ordering of nature. He says this with impressive calm, as if listing ingredients for soup. The young cleric dips his quill too deeply and drops ink onto his sleeve. He stares at the stain. "There," says Marjorie, "you have been marked by scholarship." You sit until the light thins at the windows and the page before Brother Anselm turns from cream to grey. The guest house grows quieter. Bowls are gathered, cloaks dry, ink dries. The dog, bored by literacy, finally releases the turnip beneath the bench and sleeps with his nose against it. You think of the mill child at the gate, her mark hidden by wool, and imagine it now existing in several worlds at once as worry, memory, blessing, alehouse tale, and perhaps one day a line of ink beside her name. When the abbey bell sounds again, the note moves through the guest house beams and over the drying pages. You rest your hands around your cup and feel the strange comfort of records, flawed though they are. Here, where parchment is costly and certainty costlier, even a birthmark can become a sentence, and a sentence can carry a life farther than any muddy road. The abbey releases you in the slow way of stone places, not all at once, but by layers: first the guest house warmth, then the smell of broth, then the dry whisper of quills, then the deep note of the bell still trembling somewhere inside your ribs. Outside, the light has shifted toward afternoon. Frost remains in the ditch shadows, but the road itself has softened into brown ruts. Your cloak, though drier now, still carries the patient scent of wet wool, beeswax, smoke, and other people's rooms. Marjorie stays behind to speak with the guest master about a woman near the ford, and Brother Anselm has returned to his pages with the grave devotion of a man who believes the world will fall apart if one abbreviation is copied poorly. The dog follows you, naturally. He has abandoned the turnip at last, perhaps out of mercy, perhaps because he has discovered that victory becomes less interesting once chewed. You walk back toward town with a wool merchant from the guest house, who has a pack of folded cloth strapped to his back and a narrow birthmark on his jaw. Pale brown and curved like a little hook. It is easy to miss until the light catches it. Once seen. It gives his face a slightly questioning look, as if he was born asking the price of everything. At the town gate, the afternoon crowd presses inward and outward at once. A cart with a cracked wheel blocks one side, and two men are giving advice to the driver with the cheerful uselessness of people not responsible for repair. The gateward from last night stands by the toll box, iron key at his belt, lantern unlit in his hand. He recognizes the wool merchant and points at the pack. "Toll for cloth." Toll was paid at St. Martin's Fair. This is not St. Martin's Fair. "No," says the merchant, and yet the cloth remains the same cloth, a marvel of continuity. The gateward is not moved by philosophy. He reaches for the pack, then pauses when he sees the mark along the merchant's jaw. "Hook mark," he says. "You'll catch profit today. Then." The merchant sighs, opens his purse, and pays. You see how quickly a mark can become a tool in another person's mouth. Hookmark means profit if one wants to flatter. Hookmark means trickery if one wants to accuse. Hookmark means nothing if one has better things to do, though few people seem to choose this last and noblest road. No one can quite agree whether certain marks bring luck, but everyone appears ready to borrow that luck when bargaining over tolls. Inside the walls, the market square has thickened into its fullest noise. The snow from earlier has melted into dark speckles over the ground. Stalls crowd the open space beneath the church tower. Traders call out ribbons, needles, smoked fish, goose fat, onions, combs, wooden cups, and little packets of herbs tied with thread. A cooper hammers hoops onto a barrel. A girl carries a basket of eggs through the crowd as carefully as if she transports royal hostages. The smell is broad and complicated hot ale, frying batter, damp straw, horse sweat, tallow smoke, and the sharp green breath of chopped leeks. You move slowly because movement here belongs to the crowd, not to you. The dog slips between legs like a brown shadow and somehow avoids being stepped on, which may be his true miracle. Near the church steps, a beggar sits with one sleeve pinned empty and a dark round birthmark beside his right eye. He has learned to make it part of his trade. When a woman drops a halfpenny into his wooden bowl, he touches 2 fingers to the mark, then to the coin, and murmurs, "Luck to your hearth." The woman smiles despite herself. Another person asks if the mark truly brings luck. The beggar lifts his brows. "Lady, if it brought me much luck, would I be sitting in the mud?" This answer pleases the listeners so much that 2 more coins fall into the bowl. Some swear that marks near the eye give second sight, or at least a sharper sense for lies, weather, and bad husbands. Others say a mark beside the mouth means persuasive speech, while one on the palm can charm money toward the hand. A dark patch hidden beneath clothing may be private fortune. A visible one must work harder, being exposed to every passer-by's opinion. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, especially when coins are involved. At a stall of wool ribbons, a young woman with a red crescent on her wrist holds out strands dyed indigo, russet, saffron, and teal. She wears the mark openly, not covered by cuff or charm. A farmer's wife notices it and touches her own child's shoulder. Good for weaving, she says. A crescent on the wrist means the hand remembers patterns. The ribbon seller smiles, but there is tiredness behind it. Then may it remember who still owes me 2 pennies. Her stall is neat, her measures fair, her fingers quick. Yet you watch customers treat the little red crescent as if it helps choose the ribbon. One woman buys teal because the marked wrist touched it first. Another avoids russet because, she whispers, red upon red invites quarrels. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the ribbon seller benefits from the superstition or endures it like a draught through a cracked wall. Across the square, a boy with a pale mark under his ear is teased by 2 apprentices who call him moon-bitten until their master cuffs them both with admirable balance. The boy ducks away, cheeks hot. His mark, small and harmless, has become a hook for shame instead of profit. You remember the mill child at the gate, the mother's hand lifting the hood. You understand that hiding is sometimes not fear of the mark, but fear of the stories thrown at it. The wool merchant beside you watches the boy. His hand goes briefly to the hook-shaped mark at his jaw. When I was small, he says, my cousin said this meant I would hang. What did your mother say? That I would sell rope before I wore it. It is a good mother's answer, practical enough to be armour. The market bell rings again, shorter this time, calling attention to a dispute near the toll table. A travelling woman selling pins has been accused of using a child's birthmark as a charm. The child, perhaps 8 years old, has a brown patch on the back of one hand, shaped vaguely like a leaf if one is generous, and like spilled gravy if one is honest. The pin seller had asked the child to touch her box for luck before counting coins. The child's father objects, not because he dislikes luck, but because luck, in his view, should not be taken without payment. The gateward squints at everyone involved. A friar wanders over. 3 neighbours contribute 6 opinions. The child looks bored. At last, the father receives 2 pins. The pin seller receives her blessing. The friar receives nothing but disappointment, and the crowd disperses satisfied by this tiny court of nonsense. Medieval justice, your learning, often works best when all parties leave mildly annoyed but not actively bleeding. You drift to the edge of the square as evening begins to gather under awnings. Visible marks shine, hide, trouble, flatter, and sell. They become luck when luck is needed, shame when cruelty is bored, charm when coins are thin, warning when suspicion wants a coat to wear. Yet beneath all of that, people remain simply people, a ribbon seller counting pennies, a beggar making humour from mud, a boy wishing his ear were less interesting, a merchant carrying wool through a gate. The abbey bell sounds faintly beyond the fields, answering the town bell with a deeper note. You stand beside the church steps while the dog leans against your boot, and the market's last gold light catches faces, hands, scars, wrinkles, and marks alike. For a little while, every body in the square seems written upon by weather, work, hunger, laughter, and birth, though only some writings are careless enough to be visible. Evening lowers itself over the market square like a wool blanket shaken out by tired hands. The last gold of the day slips from the church steps, leaving the stones blue and damp. Traders fold cloth, count coins, tie sacks, and argue over whether a goose has been paid for twice or not at all. The goose contributes loudly to the legal uncertainty. Smoke thickens above the rooftops, somewhere behind you. The boy with the pale mark under his ear disappears into the lane with his master, and the ribbon seller covers her indigo, russet, saffron, and teal strands beneath a square of linen. The dog leans against your boot, warm and uninvited. You are thinking of finding the alehouse again, because the body, however curious, remains loyal to food and fire. But then Marjorie appears at the edge of the square with her shawl pulled low and her mouth set in that firm line used by midwives, abbesses, and women carrying bad news in cold weather. "There you are," she says. It is not a greeting, it is a verdict. She nods toward the Abbey Road. "Come along. Brother Odo wants eyes on a mark." "Brother Odo, you ask? The doubtful one? This describes half the monks you've met, but you follow anyway. The town gate is closing later than usual because a cartwheel is split near the arch, and 3 men are standing around it with tools, opinions, and no visible progress. You pass through the postern as the gateward lifts his lantern. He recognizes Marjorie and lets her go with no toll, which may be the strongest proof of her authority yet. Behind the wall, the market noise thins into muffled clatter. Ahead, the abbey fields lie under frost and gathering dark. The road back feels longer by evening. Mud grips your boots. The dog trots ahead, then returns, then trots ahead again, apparently convinced that journeys improve when repeated in small portions. Bare branches scratch the dim sky. From the abbey tower, the bell sounds for vespers, slow and solemn, and the note travels over the fields like a dark bird. By the time you reach the outer yard, the abbey windows glow with candlelight. A lay brother carries a bucket across the stones. Another stacks firewood near a shed, each piece knocking softly against the next. The guest house smells of supper, but Marjorie leads you past it, through a side passage, and into the infirmary. The room is warmer than the yard, but cooler than comfort. Its walls are lime-washed, its floor strewn with fresh rushes and winter savoury to sweeten the air. Beds stand along one side, simple wooden frames with wool blankets folded at the foot. Shelves hold jars, linen rolls, horn cups, dried roots, and bunches of herbs hanging upside-down comfrey, yarrow, plantain, sage, rue, and betony. Near the hearth sits a basin of water, a small brass vessel for blessed water, and a covered jar that makes Marjorie glance at it with dislike. "Leeches," says Brother Odo from the table. He is the monk from the guest house, not as old as Brother Anselm, broader in the shoulders, with eyes that seem permanently prepared to doubt a miracle and then feel guilty about it. His sleeves are rolled, ink stains remain on one finger, but the rest of him smells faintly of vinegar, smoke, and medicinal herbs. A beeswax candle burns beside him, already half spent, its light trembling over a small boy seated on a stool. The boy is perhaps 9. He keeps one sleeve pushed up. On the inside of his forearm lies a red-brown birthmark, long and uneven, like a little stream seen from far above. His mother stands behind him with both hands on his shoulders. She looks as if she has spent the day holding herself together by grip alone. Brother Odo points to the mark without touching it. His aunt says it has darkened. "It has not," says the mother quickly, "only he has grown." The boy stares at the leech jar with the fascinated horror common to boys, saints, and travellers who were not warned early enough. Marjorie sits near him. Does it hurt? No. Burn? No. Itch? No. Then it has better manners than half this parish. The boy smiles, barely. Here in the infirmary, belief changes shape again. It becomes remedy. Not cure exactly, because a birthmark from birth is a stubborn guest. But there are washes, prayers, rubbings, charms, fasts, little habits performed in hope. Some swear that water blessed on a saint's feast can soften a red mark if dabbed before sunrise. Others say an herb poultice of plantain and honey may calm the colour. A few insist that leeches draw out excess blood from angry skin. Though even Brother Odo looks at the covered jar as if the leeches have made exaggerated claims about their training. No one can quite agree whether such treatments mend the mark, soothe the family, or simply give everyone something to do with their hands. Brother Odo dips a cloth into warm water scented with sage. We do not cut, he says, perhaps to the mother, perhaps to the room, perhaps to himself. We do not burn. We do not scrape what God and nature have laid down. Marjorie nods once. Good. The mother exhales. There are harsher tales elsewhere, whispered in markets and manor kitchens, marks rubbed with salt, bound with charms too tight, threatened with hot metal, or blamed on sin loudly enough to bruise without touch. But this abbey room, for all its jars and suspicions, chooses gentleness. Brother Odo lays the warm cloth over the boy's forearm. Steam rises faintly. The boy relaxes by a single careful inch. The monk murmurs a prayer, quiet and almost embarrassed. He touches 2 fingers to the brass vessel of blessed water and lets one drop fall near the mark, not on it, as if even holiness should ask permission. Then he wraps the arm loosely in clean linen. There, he says, if it changes, return. If it does not, let the child sleep, eat, and be left in peace. The boy's mother begins to cry, silently, which makes the boy look more alarmed than the leeches did. Marjorie pats her hand with the experienced calm of someone who has seen women cry from fear, relief, hunger, exhaustion, childbirth, and husbands being foolish in new varieties. Brother Odo notices you watching him. You expected certainty. Not especially. Good. Certainty is a strong medicine, best used sparingly. Outside, the abbey bell finishes its note. Inside, the rushes whisper underfoot as the mother and boy leave. The dog, who has somehow entered despite every reasonable rule, sniffs the leech jar and retreats with excellent judgment. You sit a while near the hearth while Brother Odo cleans the basin and Marjorie warms her hands. Herbs sway in the rafters. The half-burned candle bends in its own wax. The infirmary holds its small peace linen, steam, wool blankets, doubtful prayers, and remedies offered not because anyone fully understands the mark, but because kindness also needs rituals. And as night gathers against the narrow windows, you think that perhaps the gentlest cure in this room is not sage, blessed water, leech, or Latin word. It is the quiet permission given to a marked child to remain exactly as he is. Rain begins before you leave the abbey yard, not with drama, but with the quiet persistence of a clerk adding charges to a bill. It taps on the roof tiles, darkens the split logs, freckles the cloaks of lay brothers crossing between sheds, and turns the road beyond the gate into a long brown ribbon of complaint. Brother Odo stands beneath the infirmary lintel with his sleeves still rolled, watching the sky as if suspecting it of theological error. Marjorie pulls her shawl closer. We go to Alderwick Manor. You glance at the rain. She glances at you. The rain wins nothing. Marjorie has delivered children in storms, snow, harvest heat, and rooms where chickens were allowed opinions. Your hesitation is not going to impress her, so you take your damp cloak from its peg, accept a heel of coarse bread from the guest master monk, and follow her down the abbey road while the dog trots between you with the resigned air of a creature who has never signed any agreement about weather. The fields lie low and wet on either side. Winter wheat shows in thin green lines. Ditches brim with brown water. A plough team stands under an ash tree, the oxen steaming gently, the ploughman wearing a hood that has surrendered all shape. In the distance, Alderwick Manor sits on a rise, not a great castle, not quite, but a fortified house of timber, stone, and stubbornness, with a small gatehouse, a ditch full of rainwater, and a hall roof patched in 3 different ages. By the time you reach the gatehouse, your boots have become private ponds. You duck inside with Marjorie, the dog, 2 villains carrying a sack of oats, a woman with a basket of eggs under her cloak, and a reeve with a wax tablet tucked against his chest. The gatehouse smells of wet wool, damp hay, old leather, cold iron, and the faint smoky breath of a brazier struggling in the corner. Rushes have been thrown over the floor, though they are so wet now that calling them rushes seems polite fiction. You wait. Manor courts are built partly from law, partly from custom, and mostly from waiting. People wait to pay fines, answer complaints, swear oaths, settle boundaries, deny borrowing pigs, admit borrowing pigs, and explain why the borrowed pig has achieved mysterious absence. The reeve scratches marks onto his wax tablet. The woman with eggs murmurs that if the court runs long, her hens will not respect the delay. The dog lies close to the brazier, then sneezes at the smoke. Inside the hall, voices rise and settle. The Lord Steward sits at the high table, you're told, with the manor rolls open before him. Beside him stand 2 older tenants, a parish priest with mud on his hem, and the father of a boy whose face bears a dark mark beneath one cheekbone. The boy himself waits near the hearth, watched by his mother, who holds his shoulder just as the mother in the infirmary held her son's arm. You see him when the gatehouse door to the yard opens and people shift. He is thin, perhaps 12, with rain-dark hair and a birthmark spreading under his left eye like a thumbprint of shadow. His face is not frightening, it is memorable, which in a village can be nearly as troublesome. He keeps his eyes on the rushes. The matter whispered through the gatehouse is not illness, it is inheritance. A small strip of meadow is in question, and a cow, and perhaps a dead uncle who appears to have promised more land than he possessed, a habit not uncommon among men nearing death and surrounded by hopeful relatives. The marked boy's father claims the child is true-born and has right through his mother's kin. Another man mutters that the mark proves otherwise. He says the boy bears the face mark of a stranger who passed through during Lent years ago. A peddler with a similar stain beneath the eye. Of course, no one can quite agree whether that peddler existed, sold knives, sold ribbons, or was invented after the meadow became desirable. Rainwater drips from the gatehouse roof into a wooden bucket. Plink, plink, plink. Marjorie's mouth tightens. In this place, as birthmark can become evidence without ever agreeing to testify. Some swear that family marks repeat, not only in the tilt of a nose or the colour of hair, but in moles, stains, patches, and little brown flecks hidden under sleeves. A mark on the cheek may be called a father's sign, a mother's proof, a bloodline rising through the skin. Others use the same belief as a knife. A child's visible difference can be turned towards suspicion not of the child, truly, but of the mother. Because courts and kitchens both have long memories when it comes to women's shame. The steward calls for Marjorie. She leaves you in the gatehouse and walks into the hall with the calm tread of someone entering a room where foolishness has grown too comfortable. You cannot hear every word, but you catch pieces through the open door and rain born at the mill hamlet. Midwife present, baptized on St. Lucy's morning, mark seen at birth, no stranger, no peddler, no Lent scandal except perhaps weak ale. The priest adds something about charity, the reeve adds something about rent. The steward asks whether anyone has seen the same mark in the mother's kin. An old woman steps forward, leaning on a stick, and says her brother had a shadow under the eye just so, though on the right side, and darker in summer, and he was a fool with geese. This helps less than she intends. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on how blood declares itself. A noble family may treasure a repeated mole as proof of ancient lineage. A peasant family may fear the same kind of mark if a neighbour sees profit in doubting it. Learned men might speak of generation, seed, resemblance, and nature's impressions. Village folk may speak of God, secrecy, guilt, or a grandmother's face returning, but the child at the hearth only stands there, becoming tired while adults argue over what his skin is allowed to mean. You shift closer to the brazier. The dog lifts his head. The woman with eggs sighs. Poor lad, she murmurs. All that fuss over a bit of face. The oats carrier nods. If Marks proved guilt, my old master's wart would have hanged him thrice. This is quietly agreed to by several people, suggesting the old master were not beloved. At last the steward's voice grows firmer. Marjorie returns first, expression unreadable. The father comes after, shoulders loosened. The mother wipes her eyes without making a sound. The boy follows, still looking at the floor, but when he passes Marjorie, she touches 2 fingers lightly to his sleeve. Not to the mark, not to the face, only to the cloth, a small public kindness. The meadow remains with the family. You gather. The cow is to be valued by 2 neighbours. The slander is not punished exactly, but the man who spoke it must provide wax for the parish candle and apologise before witnesses, which is a medieval way of saying he has been expensive and must now become useful. Rain softens outside. The gatehouse crowd begins to move again, each person carrying a grievance, relief, or damp basket back into the yard. You step out beneath the low arch. Beyond the manor ditch, fields shine under grey light. The boy with the cheek mark walks beside his mother toward the byre. No more explained than before, but perhaps a little less endangered by explanation. You follow Marjorie down the manor road, wet cloak heavy on your shoulders. Behind you, the court resumes its slow work fines, oaths, pigs, boundaries, meadow grass. Ahead, evening gathers, and in the sound of rain dripping from bare hedges, you understand that a birthmark may be called a sign of blood, a stain of rumour, or nothing at all but the kindest judgment, in any age, may be the one that lets a child go home. The road from Alderwick Manor bends away from the open fields and slips toward the forest as evening deepens, and you follow Marjorie beneath hedges that drip rain from every thorn. The court's voices fade behind you, meadow, cow, apology, wax for the parish candle. Ahead, the trees gather in a dark line, their bare branches netting the sky. Your cloak hangs heavy on your shoulders, your boots pull free of the mud with soft, undignified sounds. The dog trots beside you, wet, pleased, and entirely without shame, which may be the secret to his happiness. Marjorie says little. She has the look of someone turning over the manor court in her mind and finding several pieces still foolish. The road narrows where cartwheels have cut deep ruts through the clay. Rainwater lies in them like strips of dull pewter. On either side, coppiced hazel and ash stand in pale stems, cut and regrown over years. The woodland managed as carefully as any field. Medieval forests, you learn, are not simply wild tangles full of mystery. They are workyards with leaves, places of timber rights, pannage for pigs, fallen branches gathered under watchful eyes, and fines for taking what a lord considers his, which is often everything not already nailed to heaven. A small smoke smell reaches you before the first hut appears. Not hearth smoke, Exactly. This is heavier, earthier, almost sweet, the slow breath of charcoal burning under turf. You come to a clearing where several low domes of earth and packed leaves smoulder in the dimness. Beside them stand rough shelters of poles and thatch, a stack of billets, a few wicker baskets, and a cart with one wheel sunk deep in mud. A boy in a russet hood turns a pole in the side of a charcoal mound, letting out a thin blue thread of smoke. Two men sit near a little fire, their faces darkened by soot until their eyes seem oddly bright. One lifts a hand, Marjorie. Of course. She nods back. What? The man called Watt has shoulders like a gate and hands black to the wrist. Beside him sits a narrower fellow with a patched cloak, a knife, and a piece of coarse bread held close to the flames. Their supper appears to be bread, onions roasted in ash, and a strip of smoked bacon so small it may be more rumour than meat. A wooden bowl of ale passes between them. They make room without ceremony, which is often the deepest courtesy tired people possess. You sit on a log slick with damp and accept a roasted onion wrapped in a dock leaf. It burns your fingers, warms your mouth, and tastes better than its appearance promised. The dog receives nothing at first, then receives a crust, then behaves as if the moral order of the world has been restored. What watches the dog? That beast marked you yet. Only with mud, you say? Best kind, says the narrow man. Washes off, mostly. Marjorie settles near the fire and stretches her cold hands toward it. The flames light the lines of her face. Behind her, the charcoal mounds breathe smoke into the dusk like sleeping creatures. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a branch cracks beneath its own wet weight. It is the narrow man who begins the tale, because men who live among trees often seem to carry stories the way their cloaks carry smoke. He says his sister's daughter was born with a brown mark shaped like a hair crouched along her ribs. Clear as daylight, he insists, though daylight is no longer present to defend itself. Long ears, back legs tucked. My sister saw a hare leap from the furrow when she was carrying. Near frightened the soul out of her. One adds gravely, hair mark makes a child quick. Or timid, says Marjorie. Quick first, says the narrow man, timid after. And so the forest gives you another old belief that an animal glimpsed in fear, especially by a pregnant woman, may stamp its shape upon the child hidden inside her. Some swear that a hare startled in the path leaves a leaping brown patch, that a fox seen near the henhouse gives a red mark sharp at the edges, that a raven crossing the moon may darken a child's shoulder, or that a toad touched by accident can leave a warty sign if the mother clutches herself in fright. No one can quite agree whether the creature must be seen, touched, dreamed of, cursed, or merely mentioned by an aunt with strong opinions. What leans closer to the fire? My cousin had a mark like a wolf's head on his back. Did he howl? Asks Marjorie. When hungry? So do monks, she says. The charcoal burners laugh softly, and the laughter rises with the smoke, small and tired and warm. The dog looks toward the trees as if considering whether wolves are a professional concern. Even now, it is hard to tell whether these beast-shaped stories come from fear of animals, respect for them, or the simple habit of seeing shapes in stains the way children see faces in clouds. A birthmark may be only uneven colour, but a village eye can make a whole bestiary from it. A pale patch becomes a fish, a dark curve becomes a snake. A cluster of red specks becomes a robin's breast, a fox's paw, a swallow, a mouse, a moth. Once named, the shape clings. The narrow man tells of a girl with a mark like a little black bird beneath her collarbone who was said to know rain before it came. What tells of a boy with a pale mark shaped like a fish on his hip, whose mother had slipped near the mill pond in her 7th month. The boy grew into a poor swimmer, which everyone agreed was either proof or irony, depending on how much ale had been poured. Marjorie listens without much correction. Her face gives nothing away except firelight. At last she says, "A frightened mother remembers the thing that frightened her." Later, when the child comes marked, folk lay one memory over the other and trim the edges until they fit. What turns an onion in the ashes, and if they do fit? Then folk trim less. This answer pleases him, perhaps because it does not steal the story outright. You look around the clearing. The charcoal burners live half in the village world and half in the old breathing dark of the woods. Their days are measured by slow fires hidden under earth, by the colour of smoke, by the cracking of timber, by rules about whose branches may be cut and whose pigs may root for acorns. In such a place, animals are not decorations in tales. They are neighbours, thieves, warnings, meat, weather signs, and sometimes fear itself moving through underbrush. It is no wonder that a mark on a child's skin might be given paws, wings, teeth, or fur. The rain has thinned now to mist. The forest smells of wet bark, charcoal, leaf mould, and roasted onion. A pack horse shifts near the cart, its harness bells giving a faint dull chime. What throws another branch onto the fire? Sparks rise, brief as fireflies, then vanish before they reach the trees. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a beast mark shapes the child's nature. Some say hair-marked children run fast and sleep lightly. Fox-marked children learn secrets. Raven-marked children remember the dead. Wolf-marked children hunger fiercely, though in winter that describes nearly everyone. Marjorie says a child becomes what it is fed, taught, feared for, and allowed to be, which is less tidy than superstition but much kinder. You finish the last soft layer of roasted onion and warm your hands close to the fire. The dog rests his head upon your boot in the darkening woods. The charcoal mounds glow faintly through cracks in their earthen skins, red as banked coals in Marjorie's hearth, and you think of the marked children you have seen or heard of now wine dark, crescent red, hook pale, shadowed, river-shaped, hair-shaped, all of them carrying stories before they are old enough to choose one. When you rise at last, what gives Marjorie a small sack of charcoal for the infirmary hearth? She accepts it with a nod. You step back onto the muddy forest road, leaving the clearing's smoky warmth behind. The trees close softly around the path, and somewhere unseen a night bird calls once, then falls silent, as if even the forest knows that some marks are made by fear, some by love, and some only by the strange, quiet hand of life itself. The forest lets you go little by little, as if reluctant to surrender its smoke and damp hush. The charcoal clearing fades behind you, first into a red wink of coals, then into the smell of wet ash, then into nothing but darkness between bare trunks. Marjorie walks ahead with the little sack of charcoal under one arm, her shawl pulled tight, her steps certain on ground that seems designed to embarrass travellers. Your boots sink, lift, and complain. The dog trots close to your heel now, less bold in the deeper dark, though he would deny this before any proper court. By the time the trees thin, night has softened into a pale, frosted dawn. You have not slept enough to deserve morning, yet morning arrives anyway, which is a common medieval injustice. The fields open wide and silver under frost. Hedges wear white along every twig. A line of crows lifts from a ploughed strip, black against the washed sky. Far off, the abbey bell sounds through the cold, and its note seems to hang over the fields rather than pass through them. At a roadside fire near a low stone cross, several pilgrims are waking beneath their cloaks. Their little camp is modest, a few wool blankets stiff with frost, a pot blackened from the coals, wooden staffs lean together, and a basket covered with linen. One man shakes ice from his hat brim. A woman ties her shoes with fingers gone clumsy from cold. Another pilgrim, young and narrow-shouldered, fastens a cluster of lead badges to his cloak, a shell, a tiny hand, a wheel, and a small saint so poorly cast that the saint appears to be either blessing the road or waving for help. Marjorie greets them, and they greet Marjorie, because by now you suspect she is known to every creature between the town ditch and the next county, including several hens and at least one judgmental mule. They make room by the fire. You sit, grateful for heat. The pot holds thin ale warmed with a little spice and more hope than strength. Someone shares coarse bread, hard cheese, and a strip of smoked fish wrapped in cloth. The dog receives a fish skin and retires with it as if granted a manor. One pilgrim notices the soot on your cloak from the charcoal burners and asks if you passed Watts Clearing. Then talk turns, as it always seems to now, toward Mark's the hair-shaped stain, the hook at the merchant's jaw, the boy at the manor court, the mill child with the wine-dark neck. The young pilgrim touches the edge of his own sleeve, pulling it lower over his wrist. You notice the movement because you have begun to notice such things. The woman with the frost-stiff shoes sees it too. No need to hide among road folk, she says gently. The young pilgrim gives a small, embarrassed smile. Road folk talk most. Town folk talk louder, says Marjorie. He hesitates. Then he pushes back the wool cuff. On the inside of his wrist lies a dark brown birthmark, almost round, with a smaller pale place at its edge. It looks, if one is determined, like an eye half closed. And people are often determined. My aunt called it a watching eye, he says. Said I must cover it before entering church, lest folk think it looked back at the saints. No one laughs. Not because it is not a little absurd, but because everyone at the fire knows the cost of being made into a story too early. Here, beneath frost-bright fields and a sky the colour of pewter, you learn why some marks are hidden. Not every covered birthmark is a secret of shame, and not every visible one is courage. Sometimes a wool sleeve is simply warmth. Sometimes a scarf saves a child from questions. Sometimes a cap, kerchief, glove, or collar becomes a small fortress. Some swear that marks should be hidden from envious eyes, because too much staring can sour good fortune. Others say a blessed mark must be covered lest pride spoil it. Others warn that a strange-shaped mark may draw suspicion in a new village, especially if shaped like an eye, a claw, a flame, or anything an excitable neighbour can name after supper. No one can quite agree whether covering a mark protects the body, the soul, or only the peace of the person wearing it. The older pilgrim with the uneven beard lifts one of his badges from his cloak. This one I wear over a mark on my shoulder, he says, a red patch. My mother said it was St. James's seal. Is it? Asks the young pilgrim. The old man shrugs. It keeps people from asking if it is a boil. This, everyone agrees, is a practical miracle. Pilgrim badges serve many purposes. They show where a person has travelled, which shrine they reached, which saint they hope has noticed them. They also hold cloaks closed, impress children, catch candlelight, and occasionally cover stains, tears, scars, and marks one does not wish to explain. You see now how a little lead shell pinned over cloth may be both devotion and disguise. A charm against gossip is still a charm. The woman with the stiff shoes unties a cord from around her neck. On it hangs a tiny pouch of blue wool, no larger than a plum stone. Inside, she says, Our three things: a thread touched to a shrine rail, a crumb from a feast day loaf, and a clipped piece of her son's first swaddling band. Her son has a pale mark across his chest. I kept this for him when he was small, she says. Not to cure the mark, to quiet the neighbours. Even now, it is hard to tell whether charms are meant to change fate or change how bravely one walks through it. A pouch, a badge, a blessed thread, a scrap of linen tied near the skin. These may be medicine, prayer, memory, or simply something for a frightened hand to hold. In a world where winter can empty a storehouse and fever can enter without knocking, people learn to carry small protections, even when they are not certain what protection means. Marjorie takes the young pilgrim's wrist in her hands, not grabbing, only holding the way she held the frightened boy's arm in the infirmary. Does it pain you? No. Then it owes no one an apology. He lowers his eyes, but he does not pull the sleeve back down at once. The sun rises weakly over the fields. Frost flashes on the furrows. The pilgrims begin packing blankets rolled, staffs lifted, bread wrapped, badges checked. One rubs grease into cracked boots. Another ties a strip of cloth around a blister. The daily work of pilgrimage is less holy than painted walls suggest. It is mostly cold feet, tolls, bad straw, sore shoulders, and the ongoing question of whether the next village sells edible cheese. Medieval pilgrimage, like many sacred things, contains a surprising amount of laundry. You walk with them for a while along the field road. The young pilgrim lets his sleeve hang loose now, not fully exposing the mark, not fully hiding it either. The old man's badge taps softly against his cloak. The woman's blue pouch rests beneath her collar. The dog wanders ahead, then back, leaving paw marks in the frost like tiny dark seals. As you move, you think of covered skin everywhere beneath wool shifts, linen bands, fur-lined cloaks, gloves, coifs, caps, and silence. Some marks never meet the market's eye. Some never become jokes, omens, court evidence, or shrine stories. They remain private, known only to mothers washing children, spouses sharing beds, midwives, healers, and the person who carries them through seasons of work and weather. The abbey bell fades behind you. Ahead, the road bends toward the Lord's lands and the smoke of evening halls. For now, there is only frost, breath, wool, and the soft clink of pilgrim badges. And you understand that hiding a birthmark is not always fear. Sometimes it is choosing when to be read and when to remain quietly, blessedly unread. The road draws you out of the frost-bright fields toward the grey plume beyond the bare orchard, where the Lord's Hall sits behind ditch and timber palisade. By the time you reach it, the day has folded into evening. The pilgrims have taken the lower road toward the next shrine, while Marjorie has turned aside to a cottage where, she says, a woman's cough has learned ambition. You continue with the wool merchant, 2 servants driving geese, and the dog, who eyes the geese with professional interest. The hall is not a castle of songs, all bright banners and noble trumpets. It is long, draughty, smoky, and busy, with dark beams, patched wall cloths, and a rush-strewn floor that has seen more boots than blessings. At one end, a dais holds the Lord's table, though the Lord himself is away hunting or judging. Along the lower trestles, servants, carters, a groom, 2 laundry women, and several household boys sit over trenchers of bread. The hearth burns hot but cannot defeat the draughts beneath the doors. You are given a place near the lower end, appropriate to your damp condition and uncertain rank. A bowl of thick pottage arrives, with leek, barley, and perhaps meat if faith is generous. There is coarse bread, smoked fish, and ale in wooden cups. Above you, soot-black rafters hold smoke in slow layers. A half-burned beeswax candle leans near the steward's bench, its honey scent almost lost beneath grease, wool, and turnip. The dog settles under your bench, while one goose hisses at him from near the door. He pretends not to hear it, a rare achievement in restraint. At first the talk is ordinary salt rents, broken harness, a missing ladle, the price of oats, the scandal of a cook accused of thinning the ale with water, which everyone agrees is not just a crime but an insult to civilization. Then a serving woman with red sleeves notices the wool merchant's pale hook mark along his jaw. "Royal mark, that," she says. The merchant sighs. Today it has been profit, trickery, rope, and now royalty. My jaw leads a richer life than I do. The servants laugh, and the woman leans closer. She tells of a prince born in a far country with a dark mark hidden beneath his arm, shaped like a crown if one loved crowns and had poor eyesight. Some said it proved he was chosen. Others said his mother had stared too long at the king's seal while carrying him. Still others, she whispers, said the mark was not royal at all, but matched one on the body of a knight who visited the Queen's chapel too often. No one can quite agree whether such stories begin in nurseries, kitchens, or the mouths of men who have lost favour at court. But once told, they travel faster than horses and need less hay. A groom from the stable adds his own tale. My uncle served in a house where the heir had a red patch behind the knee, kept hidden. They said the same mark was on his grandfather. Behind the knee, says a laundry woman, a noble place for destiny to crouch. Hidden marks matter more, the groom insists. If a sign is covered, folk think it must be deep. You hear again the young pilgrim at the morning fire, his sleeve drawn over the watching eye mark. Hidden skin does gather power in the imagination. A birthmark under linen can become a secret seal, proof of blood, shame, election, betrayal, or whatever rumour needs for supper, in great households where inheritance moves land, rents, marriages, and swords. Even a mark no one sees may become dangerously useful. Some swear that a true heir can be known by a mole near the heart, a crescent on the shoulder, or a red patch beneath the ribs. Others say false heirs are invented with whispers, dim candlelight, and one aunt willing to remember too much. The serving woman lowers her voice, though the hall is too noisy for secrecy. There was a lady, she says, who bore a daughter with a white mark on her brow. The nurse said it was an angel's thumb. The steward said it came from fright. The Lord said nothing, which frightened everyone most. And the daughter, you ask? Married well, says the woman, or so it became an angel's thumb. This seems to be the rule. Success improves omens backward. Near the hearth, a boy turns a spit with sleepy patience, though the meat roasting there is for the high table and not for you. He has a small brown mark on one hand, visible when he reaches for the handle. Another servant teases that it means he was born to hold kitchens together. The boy answers that if so, destiny might help with the grease. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether birthmarks reveal nature or whether people train children to become the thing the mark supposedly promises. A hand-marked child is given tools. A foot-marked child is teased for wandering. An eye-marked child is asked what he sees. A royal child with a hidden mark becomes a vessel for faction and fear. The mark may be silent, but households are not. The great hall breathes around you. Rushes crackle under feet. Cups knock on trestles. A scullion carries wooden trenchers toward the kitchen passage. Near the wall, a woman mends a torn sleeve by firelight, pulling linen thread through wool with quick fingers. The Lord's hounds sleep beside the hearth. twitching in dreams. Above the dais hang shields darkened by smoke. Their painted beasts faded into shapes that could mean anything after enough ale. The wool merchant rubs his jaw. Best mark, he says, is one no one notices. Not true, says the serving woman. Best mark is one noticed by the right person at the right time. Her words settle colder than the draught. You understand then why rumour is useful in halls like this. A whispered mark can raise a claim, soften a scandal, frighten a rival, comfort a mother, or give servants something to trade when coins are scarce. Stories pass from buttery to stable, from laundry yard to chapel porch, from nurse to clerk to steward to lord, losing truth and gaining shape with every hand. Later, as the trestles are cleared and the fire sinks lower, you lean back against the draughty wall and feel sleep pull at you. You think of royal children you will never see, of secret marks beneath silk and linen, of common children stared at in gates and markets, and of how the same patch of skin may become blessing in one mouth, accusation in another, inheritance in a third. The abbey bell sounds faintly beyond the dark fields. Inside the hall, firelight moves over faces marked by work, age, smoke, laughter, and birth, and you rest among the murmuring servants, understanding that in the Middle Ages a birthmark does not need to speak to change a room. It only needs someone nearby who knows how to use a whisper. You sleep in the Lord's Hall, though sleep here is less a kingdom than a disputed strip of meadow. The rushes beneath you are fresh in places and ancient in others. The fire sinks from orange flame to red breath. Servants step over sleeping bodies with the skill of people who learned long ago that toes are everywhere. Somewhere near the kitchen passage, a pot lid clatters. Someone whispers an apology to a saint. And one of the hounds dreams loudly of chasing something that has better prospects than you do. The dog with the tournier has vanished. This should not concern you. He belongs to no one, obeys no schedule, and treats walls, doors, and human intention as mild suggestions. Yet when you wake in the blue-black hour before true morning, you hear a soft scrape near the hall door and see him standing there, looking back at you with the solemn urgency of a messenger who has forgotten the message but remembers it involved food. You rise because the floor is cold enough to make lying down feel like a punishment. Pulling your cloak around your shoulders, you follow him past the dying hearth, past the trestles stacked near the wall, past the half-burned beeswax candle leaning in its own wax beside the steward's bench. Its faint honey scent follows you into the passage like a memory from Marjorie's room. Outside, the yard lies under thin frost. The manor buildings are dark humps against the paling east, but the chapel path beyond the gatehouse shows a thread of light where a lantern moves. The dog trots toward it, stopping only once to investigate a bucket with deep spiritual attention. You follow, boots crunching softly over frozen mud. The path does not lead toward the town. It bends back toward the abbey lands, where the small outer chapel stands near the Pilgrim's Road, built for travellers who arrive too late for the main church or too muddy for anyone's patience. Its roof is steep, its stones damp, and its doorway low enough to remind pride to duck. A bell hangs beneath a little wooden shelter, silent now. Beside the door, someone has left a bundle of rushes, a clay jug, and a basket of linen cloths. Inside, candlelight trembles on whitewashed walls. The chapel smells of beeswax, cold stone, damp wool, and the sour sweet breath of people who have walked too far. A painted image of the Virgin stands above the small altar, her blue robe faded to the colour of old sky. Below her rests the relic. It is set inside a little silvered case, cracked across one corner and repaired with wire. Within, wrapped in cloudy glass, lies a small brown thing said to be a finger bone of Saint Aurelia, though some swear it is a toe of Saint Edith, and others, very quietly, say it looks like no holy finger they have ever imagined. No one can quite agree whether the relic heals, blesses, comforts, or merely survives on the strength of everyone being too polite to ask hard questions near an altar. Brother Odo stands beside it, shoulders hunched in his cloak, face more doubtful than awake. Brother Anselm is there too, carrying a small book and a candle stub. Marjorie kneels near a woman seated on a low stool. In the woman's arms lies a newborn bundled in linen and brown wool. So small the blankets seem to hold more hope than child. The mother looks exhausted in the way only new mothers and Winterfields can look, emptied, softened, and somehow still full of hidden strength. Her hair is damp at the temples. Her husband stands behind her with both hands clasped as if restraining himself from becoming useless in several directions. A village woman, perhaps an aunt, hovers near the wall with a basket of swaddling bands and the expression of someone prepared to remember everything incorrectly. The infant stirs. Marjorie folds back the linen just enough. On the child's upper chest, close below the collarbone, lies a red mark, small but vivid, shaped almost like a drop of sealing wax. Almost. That word does much labour in medieval belief. The aunt whispers, "It is the saint's drop." Brother Odo closes his eyes for a moment. "It is a birthmark." "Both may be true," says Brother Anselm softly, "because scribes enjoy leaving doors open in case theology needs to pass through." The mother says nothing. Her eyes are fixed on the child's face, not the mark. This, perhaps, is the clearest wisdom in the chapel. You stand near the back beside the dog, who has settled under a bench with the air of one who brought the party together and now expects no credit. The half-burned candle from the steward's bench seems to have a cousin here on the altar, another short beeswax stump. Bent and dripping, its flame wavering beside the cracked relic case. Light touches the infant's mark, the mother's pale fingers, Marjorie's lined hands, Brother Odo's worried mouth. Here the belief is delicate. Some say if a newborn with a red mark is touched near a trusted relic before the third sunrise, the mark may fade, or soften, or become a blessing rather than a warning. Some say the child must be passed clockwise before the altar. Others insist 3 drops of water from the chapel basin should be dabbed near, never on, the mark. A few old women say that if the candle flame leans toward the child, the saint accepts the mark. If it leans away, the family should pray harder, though drafts in chapels are rarely asked for testimony. Even now, it is hard to tell whether anyone believes the ritual will change the skin, or whether they hope it will change the fear surrounding it. Marjorie takes warm water from a small bowl and wipes the baby's chin. Not the mark, the chin. Practical care first, mystery after. "He is breathing well," she says. The mother exhales, and the whole chapel seems to exhale with her. Brother Odo touches the relic case with 2 fingers, lightly, almost reluctantly. Then he touches the altar cloth, then lifts his hand over the child without laying it down. "May God guard what he has made," he murmurs. It is a careful blessing, neither promising too much nor denying comfort. The aunt looks disappointed by its lack of spectacle. The husband looks grateful that no one has asked him to understand anything. Brother Anselm writes a line in his little book, because if a candle flickers within 30 paces of him, ink must apparently become involved. The candle flame leans toward the child. The aunt gasps. The chapel door, not fully closed, breathes inward with the cold. Brother Odo glances at it. Marjorie does too. Neither speaks. Mercy, tonight, allows the draught its miracle. The mother lowers her face and kisses the child's forehead. The red mark remains where it is, neither brighter nor dimmer, only warmed by candlelight and surrounded by meaning. You think of the first night at the gate, the wine-dark mark hidden under wool, of shrine bread, moon bells, market whispers, sage cloth, manor judgment, pilgrim badges, and smoky hall rumour. Now all those roads seem to meet here. Beside a cracked relic no one entirely trusts, and a child too new for any story to deserve him. When the family leaves, the aunt carries the basket, the father carries the lantern, and the mother carries the baby against her heart. Brother Odo watches them go. People need gentler doubts, he says at last. Brother Anselm closes his book, or kinder certainties. The dog rises, stretches, and trots toward the door, as if satisfied that holiness has concluded for the hour. You follow him back into the cold, while behind you the chapel candle burns lower beside the relic's wired crack. The sky is beginning to pale, and the world feels hushed, not because the mystery has been solved, but because everyone has agreed, for one small child, to let wonder be softer than fear. The chapel door closes behind you with a soft wooden sigh, and the cracked relic, the doubtful monks, the tired mother, and the newborn fall back into candlelit silence. Outside, the cold has deepened. Frost catches the last pale edge of moonlight, and every breath feels rinsed in the river. The dog trots ahead, nose low, convinced that holiness leaves interesting smells in its wake. You and Marjorie follow the pilgrim's road beyond the chapel wall. Brother Odo walks with you for a while, his cloak drawn up, his face hidden beneath his hood. Behind you, the chapel lantern dwindles to a gold dot among black trees. Ahead, the lane runs between hedges, past sleeping fields and low cottages where banked hearths breathe smoke through the thatch. No one speaks at first. The night seems too carefully made for speech-hard stars, white ruts, frozen puddles, branches creaking, the far-off mutter of the river under mist. Somewhere a cow shifts in a byre. Somewhere a baby cries once, then is hushed. Medieval darkness is not empty. It is crowded with small lives trying not to freeze. At the first cottage beyond the abbey boundary, an old man is tying red thread around a thorn branch over his doorway. He works by lantern glow, fingers stiff, cap pulled low. Marjorie stops. Late work. Hob. Early protection, he answers. Granddaughter's babe has a mark on the heel. My wife says red thread keeps wandering spirits from following it. Brother Odo makes a tiny sound that may be prayer or indigestion. The old man points toward the cottage. Priest bless the child this noon. Thread does no harm after. There it is, quiet and ordinary church blessing in the daylight, older thread charm in the dark. No one can quite agree whether such customs are faithful, foolish, harmless, dangerous, or simply what people do when they love a child and the night feels large. Brother Odo could scold, perhaps. He does not. He only says, tie it high enough that goats do not eat the protection. Hob nods gravely. Goats have no respect for spirits. You walk on, and the dog pauses to inspect the thread from a distance, wisely deciding against goat-like behaviour. The road bends past a frozen pond rimmed with reeds. Brother Odo keeps beside you until the chapel light vanishes completely. In books, he says at last, men write as if belief sits in separate jars. Holy things here, household charms there, nature in another, sin in another. He glances toward the dark cottages, but people do not live in jars. Marjorie snorts, nor would they keep well in them. You imagine the jars in the Abbey Infirmary sage, rue, plantain, leeches, each labelled, each contained. But out here, belief spills. A mother crosses herself, then pins blue thread under a cradle. A father takes a child to a relic, then hangs iron shears near the bed to cut ill luck. A grandmother whispers a saint's name over a birthmark, then turns the baby's shift inside out for one night, because her grandmother did so, and no one wishes to be the first fool to stop. Some swear that iron near a marked child keeps troublesome unseen things away. Others say rowan twigs, red wool, salt under the threshold, or a crust from the first loaf baked after birth may protect the child from envy. Some old women will not let a stranger praise a marked baby without spitting lightly aside afterward, not rudely, but to turn aside the evil eye. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the danger lies in spirits, jealousy, demons, fair folk, bad air, or neighbours with too much time. The abbey bell rings far behind you, one deep note from the tower. Brother Odo bows his head. Hobbs' red thread stirs in the wind. The sound and the charm share the same night without quarrel. You pass another cottage where rushes have been stacked by the door for mourning. A woman in a linen coif steps outside, carrying ashes in a wooden pan. She tips them near the dung heap, then pauses when she sees Marjorie. "Willow bark for the child's fever?" she asks. "In the morning," Marjorie says. "Keep him warm, not too near the smoke." The woman nods, then touches 2 fingers to a little charm sewn into her sleeve, shaped like a tiny cloth hand. Brother Odo sees it. He says nothing. His silence is not approval exactly, but it is kinder than thunder. Even now, it is hard to tell whether these old habits are remnants of older gods, village medicine, family memory, or fear wearing familiar clothes. The people themselves may not separate them. They walk to mass. They light candles before saints. They mutter charms over churns that will not butter, cradle cords that knot, cows that refuse milk, and birthmarks shaped like things no one wants to name too loudly after dark. Life is uncertain, so protection becomes layered, like winter clothing. Linen, wool, cloak, prayer, thread, salt, iron, blessing. The road rises slightly. From the top, you can see the town walls behind you, only a darker shape against the sky, and the manor lands to the west, dim fields under frost. Ahead, the path fades between 2 low hills where blackthorn grows thick. Brother Odo stops there. "I return," he says. Compline will not sing itself, though some brothers seem willing to test the matter. Marjorie gives him the small sack of charcoal from the burners, for your infirmary. He takes it, and for once his doubtful face softens. "And for your next argument with foolishness, I carry my own fuel." He almost smiles. Then he turns back toward the abbey, a dark shape moving beneath stars, carrying charcoal and doubts. You continue with Marjorie along the night road. The dog moves between you, paws silent on frozen mud. The hedges close in, then open. Here and there, little signs of human fear and hope appear in the dark, a horseshoe nailed over a byre door, a sprig of evergreen tucked into a window crack, a strip of red cloth tied to a cradle board set outside for airing, stiff with frost. Nothing grand, nothing that would make a king pause. Yet each small object seems to say the same thing. Let this house be spared. Let this child be safe. Let this mark mean mercy if it must mean anything at all. You think again of the newborn beneath the chapel candle. Perhaps by morning, the aunt will say the flame leaned toward him because the saint accepted him. Brother Odo will remember the draught. Marjorie will remember his breathing. The mother will remember the weight of him against her chest. All will be true in their own rooms. The stars sharpen overhead. Your body grows tired after too much road and too many stories. Marjorie does not hurry. Perhaps that is how people here endure the unknown. They do not solve it. They wrap it in wool, bless it, guard it with thread, joke about goats, and carry it carefully through the dark. The night road carries you onward until the stars begin to loosen their hold on the sky. Marjorie walks beside you in silence now, not because there is nothing left to say, but because some roads ask for quiet. Frost whitens the hedges. Your cloak is stiff at the hem. The dog moves ahead and behind, a small dark shape stitching the path together. Far back, beyond the folds of field and wood, the abbey bell gives one faint note before dawn, so soft you almost mistake it for memory. The small keep appears slowly. At first it is only a darker block against the paling east, set on a low rise above a frozen stream. Then the tower takes shape, square and plain, with one torch guttering near the gate and smoke lifting from a kitchen roof within the palisade. It is no grand castle of songs. Its stones are damp, its timber gate patched, its ditch half choked with reeds, and one corner of the wall leans in a way that suggests confidence has not been consulted recently. Still, after the long road, it looks like shelter, and shelter is often more beautiful than splendour. A sleepy guard lets Marjorie pass at once. By now, this no longer surprises you. She seems to possess a key made not of iron, but of births remembered, fevers tended, and foolish men corrected in public. The dog slips through with equal authority. Inside the yard, morning work has begun in small, reluctant movements. A kitchen girl carries a wooden bucket from the well. A groom breaks ice in a trough with the back of an axe. Chickens emerge from under a cart and begin the day with undeserved confidence. Near the stable, the broken cart wheel from the town gate rests against a wall, brought here for mending, its spokes muddy and cracked. Even wheels, it seems, travel farther than planned. You are led into a low chamber near the hearth-room, where rushes cover the floor and a fire burns carefully under an iron pot. The air smells of oatcakes, smoke, damp wool, and milk warming in a pan. A beeswax candle, burned halfway down, stands on the table beside an iron key, a bowl of salt, and a folded linen cloth. The candle reminds you of every flame along the journey Marjorie's room, the shrine, the infirmary, the chapel relic no one quite trusts. Each little light has tried, in its own trembling way, to make fear smaller. A woman sits near the hearth with a child on her lap. The child is not the mill girl from the gate, not the boy from the manor court, not the newborn beneath the chapel candle. This one is perhaps 4, round-cheeked and serious, wrapped in a wool blanket. Across the back of one small hand lies a pale brown birthmark shaped, if one wishes, like a leaf. The woman notices you looking and does not cover it. My mother called it an ash leaf, she says. My husband's mother called it a sign of wandering. The priest said it was nothing to fear. My aunt said it would bring skill with herbs. The reeve said marks are best written down. Marjorie said to let the child finish breakfast. Marjorie removes her shawl and hangs it near the fire. I remain correct. The child holds an oatcake in the marked hand and eats with deep concentration. If destiny has plans, it must wait until breakfast is done. You sit near the hearth, grateful for warmth that reaches the bones slowly. The woman pours thin ale into cups and sets out coarse bread, curds, and a little dish of honey saved for travellers or children or both. Outside, Pale light spreads over the yard. The keep wakes one hinge, hoof, cough, and clatter at a time. Some swear that a mark shaped like a leaf means a child belongs to green things, that such a one will know which herb eases fever, which root draws pain, which flower should be left alone because beauty sometimes keeps poison for company. Others say leaf marks belong to wanderers, since leaves travel when the wind commands. No one can quite agree whether a shape gives a child a future, or whether adults simply lay futures over shapes the way they lay blankets over sleeping bodies. You watch the child lick honey from her thumb, entirely unconcerned with botany, prophecy, or the burdens of symbolic interpretation. And there, in the hush of the small keep at dawn, the long road gathers itself inside you, the wine-dark mark under a girl's hood at the gate, the old midwife's hearth and her red-sewn pouch, the shrine bread set before a painted saint, cherries, moon bells, inked margins, market luck, sage cloth, manna suspicion, hair shapes in charcoal smoke, pilgrim badges hiding skin, whispered royal rumours in the hall, a cracked relic lit by a leaning candle, red thread tied against the night. Every place has offered an answer. None has held the whole truth. Perhaps medieval people do not believe one thing about birthmarks. Perhaps they believe many things at once, because life gives them many kinds of fear. A mother needs blessing, a neighbour wants gossip, a monk seeks order, a scribe seeks record, a healer seeks gentleness, a court seeks proof, a child seeks only warmth, bread, and the right to be looked at without being turned into a warning. The keep's morning bell rings from a small frame above the yard, a thin sound compared with the abbey's deep voice. The child looks up, then back to the oatcake. Marjorie warms her hands and says nothing. Her silence feels like the final lesson. Some marks fade, some stay, some are hidden, some become famous in a village no wider than 3 muddy lanes, but all of them rest upon living skin, and living skin belongs first to the person who carries it. Outside, dawn brightens over the stream. Ice near the bank glows faintly. Smoke rises straight for a moment before the wind takes it. The dog curls near the hearth with his nose tucked under his tail, the torn ear folded softly, as if he too has decided that the world has explained enough for one night. You lean back against the warm wall and let the keep settle around you. The candle flame grows small, the oatcakes cool. Marjorie's eyes half close, though you know she will wake at the first cry, knock, cough, or foolish question. The child's marked hand rests open now on the blanket, honey bright at the fingertips, leaf-shaped patch quiet in the morning light, and you understand, gently, that what medieval people believed about birthmarks was never only about skin. It was about longing for meaning in a world of mud, bells, saints, hunger, winter, birth, danger, and love. The fire lowers itself to a softer glow, and the room grows still around you. The little keep no longer feels like the end of a road, but like a warm pause held inside dawn. Outside, the yard sounds fade into distance, the bucket at the well, the groom by the trough, the hens scratching near the wall. They become small, harmless sounds, tucked beneath the hush of morning. The child sleeps now against her mother's side, one marked hand folded under her cheek, and no one in the room asks what the mark means. It is only there, as quiet as breath, as ordinary as wool, as tender as a hand resting on a blanket. You let your own hands loosen. You let the cold road fall away from your shoulders, the gate, the shrine, the abbey, the market, the manor, the forest, the chapel, all soften at the edges, becoming less like places you must cross and more like pictures fading behind your eyes. The bells are far away now, the old fears are far away too. Whatever signs people once read in skin, stars, candles, animals, and weather, none of them need trouble you here. For now, there is only warmth. There is only the low fire, the dim gold of beeswax, the smell of bread and smoke, the dog sleeping by the hearth, and dawn resting gently on the stones. You have walked far enough. You have listened long enough. The medieval world grows quiet, not empty, but calm, as if every road has finally found its blanket. So let the last candle burn low, let the frost shine beyond the door, let the little marked hand sleep in peace, and let yourself drift, slowly and safely, into the dark behind the firelight, where even old stories close their eyes and rest.